Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Phantom Airborne All The Way. I am your host, Greg Stanley. Today with me, I have James Matriciano and I have Chris Black. They are from Fuel Stop Chats, and we're going to do a little something different today. James and Chris run their own podcast. You've probably seen it on the Phantom page in the last few days. That I was on their show earlier this week. Guys, tell us a little bit about your podcast.
It's a motorcycle-based podcast, but that's really loosely termed. The whole premise behind it is when you go for a motorcycle ride, if anybody here rides a motorcycle, you will know anytime that you stop at a gas station to get fuel, somebody's going to walk up to you and start talking to you about your motorcycle. If you're riding with a group of friends, you're usually stopping, then getting off of the bike for, the smoke break, have a drink, just sort of stretch your legs a little bit. And there's always a conversation. The conversations are wild, crazy, and unorthodox. That's really our podcast, is wild, crazy, and unorthodox. We'll talk about motorcycles. We'll talk about trips. We'll talk about gear, but we talk about music and campfires. What's the best way to make one? What's the best putting together, are you tenting with a big tent or a small tent?
What's your favorite bourbon?
Where's your favorite barbecue joint? What do you want at a barbecue joint? Is it solely upon the banana pudding, which is my whole basis of you can make the best barbecue, but if you can't make a banana pudding, I don't really want it. So that's really what our show is about. It's everything's open for discussion, but we don't talk about religion and politics.
Hey, James, here's a big word for you. It's eclectic.
There you go.
Well, Chris, how long have you guys been doing this show together?
We started hosting rides when we traveled for work somewhere around 10 years ago or so. I just got tired of going from the airport to the hotel to the conference room and back. And so I started renting bikes and taking rides. Then it was 2 guys, then it was 3, then it was 8. And we were sitting around a fire talking, and somebody said, you guys should do this for a living. COVID generated a lot of need for a lot of people to stay connected. It was James and I's way to stay connected. We've ridden thousands of miles together, traveled to the Isle of Man TT races together, did Scotland together. We've traveled a lot together. And it's a lot of fun to when you do ride, as James said, there's always a conversation. I don't care. What are you riding? I've heard, I didn't know BMW made motorcycles. I've heard one of the best, funniest lines I've ever heard in my life was during one of our rides when a young guy started talking about how crazy we ride and how fast we go and how shocked he was that us old guys ride so fast. And James took a big draw off his cigar and he said, you ever heard that saying about having a wild hair up your butt? He said, yeah, I've heard that before. And he goes, every once in a while, you got to pluck one out. So that's the kind of stuff that you'll hear on the podcast. We've had musical guests on. We've had, Will, who was the host of Forged in Fire, on. These guys ride, but they play music. We had the guy from Dirty Honey, the lead singer. He's a GS rider, and so yes, we ride, but we also have other interests.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Will Willis from Forged by Fire for the first, I don't know, what was it, 4 or 5 seasons. He was the host of that show. He was on our podcast. He's actually a U.S. Army paratrooper and PJ. So I had actually talked to him earlier this week. I said, let's go, buddy. Come on. He's like,
you know what? We should get him to come on and talk to Greg for a little while. Kind of
just keep chipping away.
Hey, Greg's got a podcast. You should talk to him and see if you can't get Will down for a jump.
I've been trying, so we'll see what happens.
I'm always up for a challenge. So you guys have been doing this for a few years, right?
We started, I guess, maybe 5 years ago. We did a few seasons, and then
life.
A lot of life got in the way. So I built this house that I'm sitting at in North Carolina, sold one house in Tampa, moved to another house in Tampa, changed positions in my job. Chris started his own company. So we just we punched the clock for a couple hours or a couple years. And we've started back up this year. I think we're on like our 5th episode of this year. We were beating ourselves up. We were trying to do a show every week, trying to get somebody that was going to be relevant. And it's difficult because
It's hard.
I don't have somebody that's going out and finding people. It's me sitting around until 1 a.m, social engineering somebody and then suckering them into answering an email by accident and then setting the hook.
So James, at the May water jump a couple of weeks ago, you had your first opportunity with Phantom to actually get a little bit of door time as a jump master. Now, I know for the last year, you have been coming out, you've been training with the jump masters, you've been, putting in all that hard work, getting your hands dirty, pulling all the duties that nobody else wants to do. You've been DZSO, you've helped out with DACO quite a bit, JMPI, but you finally got yourself a little bit of door time. Talk about that a little bit and tell me how that felt to get back in the door.
So I've been really trying to compartmentalize that exact experience. It's been a long road. I hadn't jumped in 20 some years. Never thought I would again. And then this opportunity came up. Getting in that plane, we had talked about it on our podcast. It's not a C-130. It's not a 141. That door is small but slippery. It's intimidating because you don't know where to put your hands.
Yeah, there's nowhere to hold on to.
I think back to when I was a jump master with the Army. I was 145, 155 pounds. I'm sitting around higher than that. We'll just say I got a little bit more weight on my butt now. And I mean, I'm not working out every day. I don't have that push-up strength. So trying to get in the door and lean out and get out there and do what you need to do and pull yourself back, I was absolutely terrified. Leading up to it.
Doing it in a full rig too is a completely different story.
Well, I had a chance to do it last year with bailout rig, and I'd almost rather just fall out of a plane without a parachute than with the bailout rig because it's a scary shoot. I mean, it really is. And I was trying to explain this to my wife. I was like, I mean, I remember last year Greg was like, well, yeah, get in the door. So I was like, all right, yeah, okay. Never held on to this. I don't know where to put my hands. The left side of it is just curved and slick. There's no other way to put it. There's no gripping point. There's nothing to place. You have to learn. You have to learn her. And that's the C-47, the Tico Bell. You have to learn her. And without having anything going into it, I didn't. So that was very intimidating. And I had not gone back to her to try to figure her out in the time period between then and now, because I've been doing a lot of other stuff, trying to get up to speed with everything we have going on within the brigade. So leading up to that point, I was absolutely terrified because not only was I afraid of falling out of that plane and being an embarrassment to the brigade.
We would have laughed at you for sure.
Oh, I know. I would have kept the shoot and walked home. You would have never seen me again. I had friends on that plane. So I'm trying to be the best me, stand up for the brigade, because I got 20 people that none of them had jumped in years. This was all of their first jump. So you're trying to project that attitude of control and positivity because you don't want to look terrified because, oh, great, the jump master's scared too. So you got to push all that down. Got the first stick out. Man, that felt good. Once I hung out the door a little bit, even though it was quick, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not afraid. And then that second stick, again, you don't have enough time to hang out the door on the water jump because it's such a quick racetrack. Also, having a helmet with a big camera on top of it, I'm scared of losing my helmet because I don't trust that little plastic clip on the bottom. So there was a little trepidation in that with like, I got $1,000 camera sitting on my head. I really don't want to lose that. But, I was able to get out there, maybe not as far as I want to, but I think that will be a gradual progression in just getting more comfortable with her. But once I got that second stick out, I checked the door because I wanted to make sure, Dave was okay because he went slamming into the side of the door. He was all bruised up that night too. Came back in and you guys were like, just looking at me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. Here, take my static line. You're yelling at me, go! I'm like, I am. I got plenty of drop zone. This is just take my time.
About that. After you went out the door, we did laugh about that.
Yeah, it's Joe Cool, baby.
We just lean back in the door and we say clear and we go when we're a jumping jump master. But you cleared the door and you leaned back in and you looked at me like, yeah, the door's clear. And you just stood there. And I was like, well, go.
Jump already.
Yeah, I came back in. I wanted to make sure that you had control of my static line. Everything was good to go. And then I went out.
Yeah. You did well, man. You did really well. I mean,
especially for
your first time.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to get you back up there.
Terrified. And over the past couple weeks, I've had some talking sessions with my wife because she's the most perfect sounding board that I have. And, explaining this all to her and then, being able to sit down, close my eyes, visualize going through all of the motions, watching the video. It's like, okay, no. I got this. No reason to be scared. No reason to be, intimidated. It's not really scared, intimidated by that door.
Well, in all fairness, though, the jumpers, they watch us and they see, jump masters up there who are cool, calm, collected, and confident. And like we show them that we got it under control. As a jump master, for me, I am constantly thinking about, I have 20 to 25 people's lives in my hands. I am ultimately responsible for everyone's safety on this aircraft, and that's never lost on me. And whether people see it or not, I mean, it's terrifying enough to really catch your attention and keep you on your toes. That's for sure. Yes. So, with you being nervous, and you being a little timid, that's a natural feeling for a jump master. And, if you told me that you weren't nervous and, that you weren't scared and it was no big deal and you were cavalier about it, I would have concerns, but.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent to like motorcycling. When people get a motorcycle, and my son got a motorcycle, I told him, I was like, the moment you're not afraid of that bike, get rid of it or get a different bike. And I think it's sort of the same with, even if you're like parachuting, skydiving, the moment you don't have that just a little bit of fear, don't do it. Because that's when you get overconfident, and that's when it's going to bite you.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, that's a good analogy. I mean, every time I go up there in the aircraft, I feel it. It's a good feeling. I like that feeling. That's part of why I like
it's the adrenaline of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a lot of responsibility, and whether, folks see it or not, I mean, they like I said, they see us being confident in the door. They figure this guy knows what the hell he's doing. But every scenario is playing through our heads, not just for our own safety, but for everyone's safety. So anyway, kudos to you, brother. You did a really good job. I was glad to see you back up there in the air, and I can't wait to get you a little more time up there in the aircraft. So check that one off on your duty roster. So
those butterflies manifest themselves in strange ways, right?
Yes, they do.
Some people
do. Well, us old guys, we got to get our adrenaline rushes somewhere.
That's it. Every once in a while, you got to pluck one out.
All right, Chris. So let's talk about something a little bit different here. So let's talk about what you're involved in. Now, the other night, I went onto your show not knowing what you were involved in, and the more you talked about it, the more enamored I was with it. In fact, as soon as we were done, I went and told my wife. I was like, "Let me tell you what Chris does," and she was like, "Are you kidding?" I said, "And he invited us to come up for a tour." She was like, "Are we going? Let's go right now." So, so
Come on up.
you're involved with Gettysburg, and you volunteer for a group, and you said you had some veterans with you. So talk a little bit about what it is you do with them, because I found it pretty riveting, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, a fellow historian who's also a BMW rider invited me to a rally in Athens and Ohio. And the center of it was around the Indian mounds and, the deep history. And people talk about America doesn't have history. And here's these Indian mounds and civilizations of, thousands of years ago. They have history. They just don't know it. So I went out for the rally and I had a really good time. I enjoyed, I got out of the Army. I didn't think I'd ever go camping again, but I did. It was fun. And we got to talking about Gettysburg, and he had spent a lot of time as an artillery reenactor with the Ohio Battalion battery that was up here. And he found out I lived by Gettysburg, and he said, "Oh my God, we need to do a rally in Gettysburg." So we got in touch with the director that runs the battlefield maintenance group. They have a volunteer program. And we said, "Hey, we'd like to bring 30 motorcyclists up here on a weekend and give back by volunteering on the battlefield." And they said, "Oh man, we got all kinds of stuff for you to do." And so it was a big draw for the people to actually come to the rally to say, "Hey, I was down in Devil's Den clearing brush, or I was over at the bloody wheat field fixing fence, or, and so when they come out for the battlefield work and the rally, we get up Saturday morning, we have breakfast, we go there at 9, and we'll work a half a day. And then Sam and I will do guided tours for the people that haven't been there, or like this year, I had a special friend who owns the private property that there's 40 feet wide of battlefield that extends up past Rock Creek. And it is the absolute far right flank of the Union infantry. And it's called Lost Avenue because nobody knows it's there. Nobody knows how to get to it. The easement was taken back from the township. They gave it back to the landowners. So if you don't know one or two of those landowners, you can't get there. So I met Dean on a happenstance conversation I was having at a diner in Gettysburg one morning. Got to talking about, my hike 45 minutes nonstop to get to Lost Avenue. And he said, "You should have just come to my house. I could walk you up my field." And I said, "Well, I'll be there Saturday." So this 87-year-old man meets me Saturday, has me parked by the barn, hands me a walking stick. And he says, let me tell you about the Baker farm and its role in the Battle of Gettysburg, where he lives, his farm. And he takes you down to the spring house and he talks about, the soldiers that were buried that didn't make it out of the field hospital. And he talks to you about the domed, baker's oven up in the field. And he, that's the treat this year. Next year, I've got another special treat planned for the guys and gals that come out for the rally. We always try to pick up something every year that they haven't seen or done or heard. And then, like I said, we volunteer a day. This year we put about I want to say a quarter of a mile of wormwood fence needed repaired. We took the old fence down, stacked up the old rails, put up the new fence, the split rail fence. And
so you were telling us a story about Dean the other night about some dowsing rods.
Yeah.
And I have thought about that all week long since you told us that story. I just thought it was so dang cool.
So Dean has had numerous famous authors and the Kennedys, for example, before JFK was, him and Jacqueline came up there and they wanted a tour up there too. So, I mean, that's the kind of people that this guy has walked up that hill. And he was telling me about this author who had brought with him another author. And he had specialized on the aspects of the Underground Railroad and the connection that Gettysburg had to the Underground Railroad. And just across Rock Creek from Dean's farm is one of the most noted stops on the Underground Railroad of its time. And so this guy was enamored with getting to talk to Dean and reminisce, and he said that he could uncover lost graves, and he could do it by dowsing. And as Dean was telling us this, he tells one of the guys, he says, "Hey, go over on that stump there and bring me them 2 pieces of wire." And the guy brought them over, and I knew what they were because we used it for finding water when I was a kid on the farm. And you hold these rods, they're kind of bent in an L shape, and you hold the L down in your hand firmly, but not too tight. And as you walk through the field, if it detects water, it'll cross. And sometimes people use sticks, and they'll pull down when they sense water. But not everybody can do that. For some reason, some people can, some people can't. And so he commenced to demonstrate where the water pipe was running through his farm to show the dowsing working. And then he said, "Now I'm going to show you where he found an unmarked grave of someone that was buried here." And he said the guy started walking across the grave site, and he said, "Here's the head," and the rods go like this. And he said, "There's the neck." And they open up a little bit. There's the body. He said, "Oh," he said, this guy lost a leg." And then he walked past that, and it opened back up again. And
that's incredible. I've never heard of anybody using dowsing for that, but I mean,
he hadn't either.
So are there a lot of unmarked graves around the Gettysburg?
Since the 90s, early 90s, that it's very rare that they find an unmarked or unexcavated. What happened was they didn't have the money to ship the bodies, and so there was a lot of Southern soldiers that were buried, and they would have Confederate graves, and they didn't have very good marking. They didn't have very good record keeping. They were not near the logisticians the Union was, and so there's even cases where one of the soldiers from Mississippi was buried because somebody mistook MA and MS for Massachusetts. And this Confederate soldier was interned in the Gettysburg battlefield in a Union group. And it wasn't until middle 80s they discovered that he's actually from Mississippi, and he actually he was a Confederate soldier. And so they removed the remains, and he was properly sent to his family and buried down in his hometown in Mississippi. Yeah, this guy was able to discover these, and the thing that was really interesting, Dean said he could even find where someone was buried but no longer is buried there.
No kidding, really? With the dowsing rods, you can do that?
With the dowsing rods, yeah,
that's incredible.
So he demonstrated it. We had some skeptics, obviously. We had there's a group that comes in from New York every year, the City Beamers. And one of the guys from Long Island was like, yeah. And he goes, "You want to try it?" And he said, "Changed my life." Because he's one of the few people that actually can do it and didn't know he could do it. He went walking across that water pipe, and he goes, "I can't keep them from curving in." And I said, "Well, you're not supposed to keep them from curving in. That's telling you where the water is." Sure. And he goes, "Yeah, but I didn't want to believe this, And so he was pretty fascinated with that.
So on your volunteer days, do you guys typically have a large group of volunteers, or is it like a smaller group? Or
no, we'll take everybody that attends the rally, but this year we normally have 30 people, 35, 40 people.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I mean it's fun. We were up by the Bloody Angle where Pickett's charge culminated in the high water mark for the South, and there's a stone fence, and then there's a split rail fence that runs down the hill from there. And while we're doing this, the whole time we're doing this, we're talking to the folks about, hey, did you know what happened here? Let me tell you about day 2. We'll talk about Longstreet's Corps, and the group from his corps, the Georgians that came through here and who they were fighting against, and we show them there's a field hospital that was set up behind some boulders, and we'll show them right over there, like right behind where you're working, and so we make it a lot of fun for them educationally, and we usually break for lunch, and then we'll do some formal tours, in the afternoon.
So if somebody was sitting here watching this and was thinking, man, I would love to go out there and, either volunteer with these guys or, just help out. I mean, how do you guys typically get your volunteers? How would somebody reach out if they said, hey, I want to be a part of this?
Yeah, so the BMW Owners News magazine that goes out to everybody that subscribes, it's called On Magazine. It's accepted now and recognized as a national rally, so it gets the same publications as any of the other rallies across the country. We have a Facebook page, the Gettysburg Memorial Worker Rally, and then obviously you can send Chris at ridehistory.com a note and say, hey man, can I get more info? And listen, you don't have to ride a BMW to attend.
But I mean, I always find, Civil War, World War II, American history, I always find that extremely interesting. I never miss a chance to learn a little bit about it. So I may take you up on that offer one day. Come up there and get the grand tour. I would love that.
I don't know what it is about veterans and history and Civil War history, and but a lot of veterans kind of dig it, and a lot of veterans ride, and so we've got this year we had retired full bird and a retired major jarhead, and we had a couple squids, and I don't think we had any wing nuts this year. Normally we get a couple of wing nuts too, and we just have a great time talking about that time in America's history. We'll spend a lot of time talking whatever subject and topicality people want of interest. Some people come because of the sculptures and the artistry and the monuments. Some pretty famous sculptors contributed to the monuments. Some people are numbers people. They want to know how many troops was here and how many were captured there. And then me, I'm personally more interested in the human interest side of things. I like to tell stories about the people that fought there and their families.
The cool stuff too is the stuff that you wouldn't see on the regular average tour as a tourist. Knowing somebody who is physically involved there and has a little bit of insight, so they can go, you want to see something cool that not everybody else gets to see. I mean, that's intriguing, and that makes you say, yes, I absolutely want to see it.
Yeah,
when you go back home and you're telling everybody about your trip, you can be like, listen, I saw something that no one else sees.
I can show you some graffiti on some of the barn walls the guys carved, and
really,
yeah. So, like I said, I can show you some pretty cool stuff. So, come on up.
I'm sold.
Come on up.
I love it.
Okay.
The conversation that we had earlier today was, we were joking around about this, and I was like, yeah, just imagine if they had paratroopers back then. And then Chris came back with, well, they had balloonists. I had no idea. So you sent over that link in the podcast. We talk about, I was a commo guy. Greg was a commo guy. And I'm reading this thing about, the balloonists that were used by the Union Army during the Civil War. And most of them were tethered. There's a couple that got away on them. But they were saying, somebody had asked, was there communications? And they said, yeah, they had come up with their own way of using like flares or flags or, like a shorthand communication. But they also did teletype. So imagine being the commo guy that you've never seen a balloon before, let alone gotten into one. It's got to be the scariest thing in the world. You don't know what flight is. So now you got to get in the.
Imagine being that commo balloon certified guy. I mean, like you could walk around with your chest boat out.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. Nobody thought to shoot them down because they were like, what is that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. And the way they created the hydrogen, they
really,
balloons. They were hydrogen balloons, but using iron ore and what is it, sulfuric acid or hydrochloric acid?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
In a wagon.
Yeah, in a wagon, they would mix those together, and those chemicals would produce the hydrogen they use to fill the balloons. Pretty
That sounds safe.
smart. Yeah. Well,
I'm going to need some hazard pay.
Yeah, that article was pretty. It was very intriguing to say the least. When you sent that, I was like, "Wait, what is this? Hold on!" And I scrolled up a little bit, and I started reading it, a little further up, and I kept reading and kept reading, and I was like, I had no idea that they use stuff like that during the Civil War. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
James, so last week you sent me an email.
Yeah.
And in this email, you had an article that you had written, and you wanted me to read over it, check it, and see what I thought about it. By the time I got to the first paragraph, I mean, you had me locked in. It was an incredible read. I thought you articulated it extremely well.
Thank you.
The article was about your experience at Phantom Airborne, about what you get out of Phantom Airborne, and I think it resonated with me, and I think it would really resonate with the rest of our members. And you've offered to read that article.
Sure.
So tell us, first of all, what your article is titled and where everybody can see it in the coming months.
Well, yeah, it's not published yet. It still has to be selected, but this is an article that I'm putting together for a motorcycle magazine that's named Roadrunner. Like I said, our podcast is about motorcycles. Motorcycles are a very big thing in my life. I've been riding probably since I was about 7 years old when I said that I wanted a motorcycle. My dad said no, but my parents were divorced. So my mother bought me a motorcycle to piss off my dad. It's been a win-win ever since. So since then, I don't think I've really ever lived too long of a period of life without a motorcycle. So it's entitled Two Wheels and Static Lines by me, James Matriciano. So when I'm not working or recording podcast episodes for Fuel Stop Chats, selfish plug right there, I find myself chasing something a bit more personal, and it's called wind therapy. For the uninitiated, it might sound poetic or even cliche, but for those who ride, it's anything but. There's a healing that comes from the road, from the constant hum of an engine, from the rhythmic lean into each corner. The wind across your face becomes a cleansing force, stripping away stress, anxiety, and the constant noise of life. It's not just motorcycles. It's about presence. The kind of deep focus that only comes when you're operating something that demands your full attention. One mistake on a bike costs you everything, and that level of intensity clears the mind in a way very few other things can. It's mindfulness with horsepower. It's meditation at 60 miles per hour. But for me, an old U.S. Army paratrooper, sometimes even wind therapy isn't enough. There are moments where the open road can't quiet the echoes of the past. It's when I need something more visceral, more immediate. It's when I need shock therapy. I found it unexpectedly at a nonprofit called Phantom Airborne Brigade based in Zephyrhills, Florida, just outside of Tampa. The Phantom Airborne Brigade isn't your average veteran organization. They're a 501c3 nonprofit created by and for retired and prior service paratroopers. Their mission is as straightforward as it is powerful: to give veterans an opportunity to reconnect with the airborne way of life. Through regular events, jumps, training, mentorship, they've built something that goes far beyond nostalgia. It's a sanctuary, a reconnection to a brotherhood and a mindset that, for many of us, ended when our DD-214s were signed. For me, the brigade has changed my life. I served with elite units like the 82nd Airborne Division, 101st, part of a legacy of warriors that stretched from Normandy to Kandahar. My jump log tallied about 100 entries by the time I left the military in 2001. I'd earned my Jump Master wings. With that, the responsibility to lead others safely into the skies and back down again. But when I transitioned out of the military, I didn't just leave a job. I left a way of life, a culture of excellence, a daily rhythm of discipline, purpose, and tight knit camaraderie that most civilians simply don't understand. And the truth is, I missed it. For 20 years, I felt like a piece of my identity had been boxed up and stored away. No one talks about how jarring the loss of tribe can be. It sneaks up on you in the form of isolation, restlessness, or a quiet kind of sadness. Those are symptoms familiar to many veterans, often signs of post traumatic stress disorder, even when there's no event to blame. The military gives you a mission every day. Civilian life often does not. So, about a year ago, an old teammate from Fort Bragg, my buddy Bob, he reaches out and asked if I'd heard of the Phantom Airborne Brigade. I had, but like many things in post military life, I just hadn't followed up with it. He was getting involved. For me, having a brother go through it was the nudge I needed. Before long, I was fully engaged. So, fast forward to today. I've requalified as a jump master, something I never expected to happen again in my life. I thought that chapter was closed. Thanks to the Phantom and its unwavering commitment to safety and tradition, I'm once again leading jumps for veterans who, like me, needed something more than a therapist office or a pill. I needed purpose. I needed action. I needed to lead again. A couple weeks ago was something special. Alongside with Bob, Chad, another buddy of mine, Dave, guys I served with decades ago. We jumped from an aircraft in flight for the first time together since 1993. The feeling of being back in the air with those men standing in the door, preparing to exit into open sky, it's hard to describe. It wasn't just a jump. It was a reclaiming of self. And the aircraft, that made it all that more powerful. We jumped from a C-47 Tico Bell, a fully restored World War II paratrooper transport that dropped troops on D-Day. This aircraft is more than a warbird. It's a flying monument. Tico Bell took part of Operation Neptune, delivering paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division over Normandy on June 6, 1944. She went on to support Operation Dragoon, Market Garden, even the Berlin airlift after the war. Today, she's maintained by the Valiant Air Command Warbird Museum in Titusville, Florida, and flies really, really well. Climbing a border is like stepping through a time portal. The insides smell of oil and sweat. The metal floors rattle beneath your boots. There's no insulation. There's no luxury. Just rivets, metal, and legacy. When those engines spool up, it's not just the propellers turning. It's history roaring to life. And to jump from her? That's something I'll carry for the rest of my life. What the Phantom Airborne Brigade offers isn't just adrenaline. It's a form of therapy rooted in identity and shared purpose. Traditional PTSD therapy, while essential, often overlooks the unique mindset and needs of former paratroopers and combat veterans. We're not wired to sit still. We don't always need to talk. Sometimes we just need to move, serve, to jump, to feel like ourselves again. That's where true healing begins. So, to those out there that are struggling in silence, know this: you are not alone. Whether it's on a Harley Davidson, on an empty road, or a parachute opening up over a grassy drop zone, or a huge lake, yes, we do water jumps, the path to healing doesn't always look like what you'd expect. For me, it's a combination of wind therapy and shock therapy. 2 wheels, static lines. The Phantom Airborne Brigade gave me back something I didn't realize I'd lost. The sky, brotherhood, the mission. And I'm proud to say I'm not done jumping yet. How's that?
That was powerful, man. I absolutely love that. You did such a good job with that, buddy. Like that's the one word I pick out of that whole thing is sanctuary. I mean, like
Yeah,
that's pretty deep. I've never heard anybody describe Phantom as sanctuary.
it
And the
is.
more I think about it, the more I think, why? Why haven't we? Because it's the perfect description. Sanctuary. I love that, man.
Thanks, man. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't hold back on this. I suffer from PTSD. Uh, According to my own mental health caretakers and the VA, I have PTSD. I am a confirmed case. I was always what's the word that I'm looking for? Hesitant. I was always hesitant in finding and seeking mental health because I had top secret SCI clearance. And you hear the rumors, oh, you're going to shrink, you're going to lose your clearance. It's not true. It's in the regulations. You can go to mental health or psychological therapy either in civilian or in the VA when you're looking at being harmful to yourself or to others or marital problems. There's an actual list that there is an Army regulation that states you cannot hold somebody back from getting a security clearance or have somebody lose a security clearance because they are going and talking to a mental health professional. So if there's anybody listening out here that is afraid to seek that help, because a lot of us, when we get out, we go and get that government job because we have the clearance. I had held on to that for probably 20 years after I got out, doing consulting or working as a contractor where you needed that. It's great because you work with the people that you just left. You're just doing it in civilian clothes and you're usually getting paid about 4 times as much as the military guy. But you utilize that clearance. My life started to suffer. My marriage definitely started to suffer until I found the help that I needed. But I was afraid to go get that help because I didn't want to lose my livelihood of being a provider because I was afraid if I went and talked to somebody, I was going to lose my clearance. And if I lose my clearance, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my identity. You're not going to have that issue. Reach out to the VA, reach out to somebody, get the help that you need.
I would tell you, man, look, the bottom line is your mental health should take precedence over whatever job, whatever. I mean, because at the end of the day, if you're not healthy, it doesn't really matter. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of us veterans are, suffer with PTSD and other things like that. And, a lot of us are in the same boat, man. We're afraid to go talk to somebody. We're too tough to go talk to somebody. We don't want to open up. We're afraid of
yeah,
people finding out.
the
You
stigma.
know, a lot of us can echo that for sure. So
Yeah,
that was a
men,
powerful word. Thank you for sharing that with us, man. Thank you.
men.
2 weeks ago, we had the May water jump, and that was probably one of the largest wing pinning ceremonies that I've been a part of, and I've been a part of quite a few of them. I think we had it was over 12, but the most special pinning, Robert Miller, one of our paraplegic jumpers, earned his wings. Now I had the honor of pinning him. He asked me to pin him. And I had the honor of doing that. And I think I enjoyed that more than he enjoyed getting his wings. I think these guys are super special. I enjoy when
Yeah.
I get to pin them. I enjoy their company. Um, I think they're the epitome of what Phantom Airborne is all about. So congratulations to Robert Miller and everybody else who earned their jump wings at the last water jump, and I honestly, truly hope that those puncture wounds in your chest are not healing. I hope they're there for the rest of your life.
I'm only doing water jumps, and I may have to do one land jump, and that'll be the jump number 5, just because there's only 40 dudes out there for a land jump in comparison to 200 for a water jump.
You know what? You make a very valid point there. Whenever, we do land jumps and you got 40 guys out there and maybe 25 of them had earned their phantom wings, you take less of a beating than you would at a water jump. At a water jump, I mean, you got almost 200 guys out there and they're all chomping at the bit to come pound those wings into your chest.
Oh, no. I watched. I saw. Mental note taken.
We also had the Larry Bales Memorial Service. I personally was not too involved in the planning of that memorial service, but Chris Stevens and Jeff East and a few of the other guys were, and I thought that they did a really good job of putting together a memorial service for Larry. It was touching, it was moving, it was respectful to Larry. His family was there in attendance, and that meant the world to us to have Larry's family there.
Yeah.
So.
Brother, I'll tell you what. I mean, it was an emotional weekend just because I was doing the jump mastering thing. But to get into formation with tap started, yeah, the allergies hit me hard. I had to walk away at that when everybody broke away because I was bawling like a baby. And I only met Larry once. But to see the turnout and the respect, that was hard to refrain from showing those emotions.
Yeah, you probably didn't see me, but I was all the way in the very back, and I did that intentionally. I was in the very last row.
You were smart. I was up in the front. I was like, damn it.
Yeah, it was a great memorial. I didn't really know what to expect. Like I said, I wasn't really involved in the planning of it too much. So to the guys who put that together, kudos to you guys. You guys did a fantastic job.
And the biggest thing I remember is there's going to be pizza. There's going to be some pizza. That's all I remember.
Yeah, and there was pizza afterwards. I mean, that was super cool. If you weren't there and you haven't seen any of the videos or whatever, Rick Hammond jumped a very large Phantom flag. It was a 4x6 Phantom flag. He jumped it. Once he got out of the water, we took it over up on the shore. We had all of our jumpers come by and sign it. I mean, there were so many signatures on that thing. It was full of signatures. And then we presented it to the family. Miss Jean, Larry's wife, she said she was going to make a spot for it at home, and she was going to make sure that it was displayed properly. I thought that was a super cool flag, and I appreciated the fact that I actually got to sign that thing before they handed it over to her. So, James, you had mentioned earlier in your article that you had 3 of your friends come jump with you at this last water jump.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had 3 of my best friends who I actually even went to jump school with. I was stationed at Bragg with them, but we went to jump school together. They came February of 23 and jumped with me. And that was by far one of the coolest experiences because, I mean, it was, 1992? The last time the 3 of us actually got to jump together. We all got to Bragg, but we all went to separate units. But, it was 1992, the last time we all of us got to jump together. And that was a really cool day. I'll carry that one with me until I die. So, I'm sure it was probably the same experience for you, but, having your friends come out, super cool, isn't it?
Oh, it was the best. When Bob had reached out to me, he's like, you heard of these guys? I was like, yeah, I looked into them about 10 years ago. I put it out in the Facebook group saying, let's do a reunion. Nobody chomped at it. I was like, all right. So that's why, in my article, I'm saying, yeah, I just sort of, like everything else, just sort of moved on with it. And then Bob came back and he's like, well, then we should do this again and let's get a reunion. I'm like, let's go. But it was still great to have a few of the guys come out and being able to throw them out of the plane. It was wonderful. I'm looking forward to hopefully doing it again with more people, if not the same people, but just to be a jump master.
Yeah, and I know, like, there's a lot of guys who put together reunion jumps with folks from their unit and guys they served with. I mean, Jeff East has put together one. Uh, Peter Huerta has put together one. Mike Whitman does one at least once a year,
Yeah.
and I always think that is just cool as hell. Uh, I wish I had that many guys from my unit who are willing to come jump. Everyone I've talked to are like, yeah, you have fun with that. We like watching your videos on Facebook, but
Oh
well,
no.
you know what? And I've heard those other guys, say the same things. I mean, talk with Mike Whitman. Ask him how he does it because he always has a good turnout. He fills an entire bird. Talk to Jeff East and Peter. I'm sure those Dawn Shady. She puts together all the female jumpers. I mean, I would think that would
That
probably
is
be
so
more
cool.
difficult to do, isn't it? Though, isn't it?
Blackie, I think I was telling you about this. There's this it's a whole plane, or is it, I think it was just a stick. They just had 10 girls out there, 10 women out there. There was, I think, the one of them was the very first female to ever go through jump school.
Non-segregated jump school. So
Yeah.
they used to be female only classes, and she was the first one who went through with the men. She was the very first one to ever graduate jump school with the men.
There's another one was the first female black hat to be an instructor at the jump school. And then there's one girl that's in there that's active duty right now.
Those women, when they went out of that aircraft, every single one of them had a flawless exit. They were by far the best stick that I put out all day long. So much so that afterwards, when I got on the ground and I went and found them, I had to go tell every single one of them how good they did up there in aircraft. Now, not that I'm surprised that there were women or anything. What I'm saying is usually you get one or two good exits out of a stick. The rest of them were terrible. Those women, every one of them were absolutely textbook. And some of them hadn't jumped in 20, 30, 50
Yeah.
years. Well, Chris, James, thank you guys so much for joining us on the show tonight. We appreciate all your time, your stories. I mean, pretty awesome. So thank you for your time. Thank you for all that you guys do. And remember, Phantom Airborne all the way. We'll see you guys later.